Okay, so a lot of you were curious about the van conversion series, so in this video I'm going to show you how I installed this shore power inlet as well as freshwater inlet. And since my baby's sleeping right now, I'm going to be whispering the whole video. And this footage was taken last summer. So starting off with the shore power inlet, I got this from Marine Co. and this is rated for 30 amps and this is made out of stainless steel, so it should be rust resistant as well as a solid cap right here that's waterproof, and it's a lot better than the plastic ones. Now over here I'm just trying to find the perfect placement for this inlet, and I'm just making sure that it's not going to catch on any of the doors, so right over here seems perfectly fine. Now to drill the perfect size holes, I'm using my hole saw collection here, and I'm just trying to find the right size. And I'm using scrap piece of plywood just to make sure that it's the right size hole saw before I start drilling it in. And I could do the same for the freshwater inlet and trying to find the right hole saw before I start drilling in it. Now I'm doing the final test on the actual metal scraps that I have and just trying to see if anything could go wrong before I start doing it on the actual van. Now it's a little bit of a loose fit, and I think this is going to work out better than having like a perfectly tight fit, since the van's going to be moving a lot, and so yeah. Now in order to secure these inlets, I'm using stainless steel screws as well as stainless steel locking nuts as well as stainless steel washers. And since the van's going to have a lot of vibration, having these nylon locking nuts should help, and it should be the better way to go. Now over here I'm just trying to mark the hole where I'm going to be drilling, and since there's these ribs from the inside of the van and I can't really see it from the outside of the van, I'm marking it from the inside. And I'm just using a step drill bit with a little plastic cup so I don't make a mess inside the van, and I can hold all that chips and burrs and metal shavings inside the cup so I don't have to vacuum. And I mean, I'm still going to vacuum, but yeah. And for now I just have a pilot hole drilled, and I'm just taping over with a larger cup from the inside of the van, so when I'm drilling an actual hole from the outside of the van with the hole saw, I don't have to worry about the mess inside. Now here's me actually drilling the hole from the outside of the van using the hole saw, and I use a little bit of blue tape to minimize any kind of scratches. Now once you get the hole saw going, it's pretty easy to cut into the sheet metal. It just takes a little bit of time. And once I was finished with the cut, I got a really nice clean result, and all the mess was contained inside the cup from the inside of the van. And I could clean up the inside of the hole by using the deburring tool to make sure that I don't have any sharp edges. Next, I could start marking out all the holes that I'm going to use to secure this inlet, and I'm just making sure everything is leveled and using a marker to locate those holes. Now anytime I'm drilling any holes to the van, I'm making sure to use a center punch, which gives you a little bit of indentation, so when you start drilling with your drill bit doesn't start wandering off and start sliding over, so make sure to use a center punch. And once all the holes are drilled, I'm just checking and making sure everything fits correctly, and there is a rubber gasket behind the stainless steel inlet, so none of the water is going to get in, but I'm just making sure everything is leveled before I start securing it to the van. And before I remove the cup from the inside of the van, I could just vacuum out whatever's in the cup and remove all the tape and clean up the burrs from the freshly drilled holes that I just drilled. And a final check and making sure there's nothing sharp, and I could vacuum out everything before I remove the cup. And finally I could start removing the cup and just making sure not to drop any of these metal shavings, and this way You don't have to make any mess inside the van. And I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup, even though I really didn't have to. Now, you never want to leave raw metal to the outside environments. So I'm using Rust-Oleum's protective enamel to prevent any kind of rust, and I could just let this dry for a few minutes. Now, while the paint is drying, I could start prepping for this inlet to be wired. Now, I'm not an electrician, but based on my research, this shore power inlet is rated for 30 amps, and I need the right size wires for that, and turns out 10 gauge TRIPLEX wires are rated for 30 amps, I believe. So that's what I'm using. Now I could strip back a little bit of the insulation and start stripping out a little bit of the wires and start getting ready to connect to the inlet. Now something that's really nice about this inlet is that all the screws are color coordinated, so you just have to fit the right wire into the right hole and tighten down the screws. So black wire to the black hole, green wire to the green hole, and white wire to the white hole. Now once all the wires are connected, I could put the cover back on and making sure not to damage any of the wires in the process, and I could screw down this screw to make sure everything is tight and secure. Lastly, there's this little black piece of plastic that's going to prevent the wires from pulling out, and you could just wedge it in and make sure to secure it with the screw, and that way the wires won't pull out. And now I have a fully assembled shore power inlet that I can install to the van. And the total length of the wire is probably about 4 feet, and I'm giving it a little bit extra just in case I could cut it down later, but I don't need more than 2 feet, to be honest. Now by this time the paint has dried, so I could move on to installing the shore power inlet. I start off by feeding in the wires through the hole and making sure that there's a rubber waterproof gasket in between the shore power inlet and the van. Now I inserted all the screws, and luckily it stayed in place without having me hold it from the outside, so I could start moving into the inside and start tightening everything down. Now from the inside I could insert the washer and nylon locking nuts and start tightening everything down as much as I can with my hands. Now it would be so much easier if I had another person in the shop, but since I don't, I'm going to have to do this myself, so I'm just using these locking pliers from the inside and tightening them from the outside. And after going back and forth from the inside and the outside and checking the fit, I have the shore power inlet installed and everything's ready to go. And over here I'm just doing a water test to make sure none of the water leaks in through these holes and making sure that I have a tight seal. And I checked the inside and making sure there was no leak, and I think we're pretty much good.
We're good.
Now once the shore power inlet was done, I could get started on the freshwater inlet. Now this is a special water tank from AGILE Off-Roading, and this water tank is designed so that it fits over the rear wheel well, and essentially saving a lot of space in the van. Now over here I'm just trying to find the perfect placement for me to install this freshwater inlet. And after a lot of going back and forth, I decided to put it right over here. And I could drill the initial pilot hole using the step drill bit and the cup method and minimize all the mess that I could make. And I'm just taping a cup from the inside, so when I'm cutting it from the outside, I can minimize the mess from the inside. And now I'm ready to drill the hole from the outside. And I could clean up the fresh cut with a deburring tool. And then I could insert the freshwater inlet and find the placement for the screws. And then I could use the center punch to locate the holes. And then I could start drilling these holes with the step drill bit. And then I could clean up these holes with the deburring tool and making sure there's no sharp edges. And finally, I could protect these fresh metal edges by using Rust-Oleum. Now once the paint dried, I could start installing the fresh water inlet. Now, like I said before, it would be so much easier if I had another person in the shop with me, but I don't, so I'm using the locking pliers to hold it from the inside and screwing it from the outside. Now the most important part of this step is screwing it down tight enough so that the rubber gasket is compressed and there's no way for any water to get in between the rubber gasket and the van. Now another thing that's really nice about this water inlet is that the hose itself is almost like a key, and just any regular hose won't fit in there. And I'm just checking and making sure that I could leave the doors open and still fill in the water tank. And lastly, I could check my work by doing the water test and checking to see if there's any leak whatsoever. And there wasn't, so we're good. And that's pretty much it for this video. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of update on how the van is doing. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, leave it in the comments below. And if you're interested in any of the tools that I use, I'll leave an Amazon affiliate link in the description below. Thanks again, and until next time. Woo-hoo!